Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Book Club of California's Southern California program titled Our Lady of the Angels, the Virgin of Guadalupe on the Walls of Los Angeles. And thank you for joining us here at Pasadena Heritage in the beautiful and historic Blinn House. And thank you for braving the heat to get here this evening. But it's nice and cool in here, right? Yeah. And there's wine, so that always helps when it's hot. My name is Kevin Kosick, and I'm the Executive Director for the Book Club of California, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all tonight and host this program. Now, for those of you that are new to the Book Club of California, we are a nonprofit member and donor-supported organization that is dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts. Oftentimes, we do that with a focus on the history and the literature of California and the West. Now, the book club publishes limited edition finely made books. We have a scholarly journal and newsletter for our members called the Quarterly Newsletter, and we have keepsakes. We host a year-round series of programs like this one in San Francisco and here in Southern California on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, book history, book culture, California history, and much, much more. Now, if you're not a member of the book club, or if your membership has lapsed and you're interested in what we do, please consider joining our century-long tradition. Our membership dues are modest, and the benefits are many, and we simply can't do the work of the book club without the support of our members. So I encourage you to talk to me after tonight's program or visit us online at bccbooks.org to find out more about the Book Club of California, to join, or even to donate. And now for tonight's program. Tonight's program is titled Our Lady of the Angels, the Virgin of Guadalupe on the Walls of Los Angeles. And our speaker is Sam Quinones. Sam Quinones is a Los Angeles-based independent journalist, a storyteller, former LA Times reporter, and the author of 5 acclaimed books of narrative nonfiction. He has worked as a journalist for 38 years, and he lived for 10 years as a freelance writer in Mexico, where he wrote his first 2 books. In 2004, he returned to the United States to work for the LA Times, covering immigration, drug trafficking, neighborhood stories, and gangs. In 2014, he then returned back to freelancing, working for National Geographic, Pacific Standard Magazine, the New York Times, Los Angeles Magazine, and many other publications. Now, his book, titled The Least of Us, was nominated for a National Book Critics Circle Award for Best Nonfiction Book of 2021. His book, Dreamland, The True Tale of America's Opiate Epidemic, won a National Book Critics Circle Award for the Best Nonfiction Book of 2015. Now, Our Lady of the Angels, the subject of his presentation tonight, is his first book of photojournalism. A little bit about the book and what you're going to hear tonight. On storefronts, alleyways, and street corners across the city, murals of the Virgin of Guadalupe grace the walls of Los Angeles in a tapestry of faith, identity, and culture. Our Lady of the Angels captures the sacred and everyday presence of Guadalupe murals across the city, offering a poignant lens into the cultural heartbeat of LA neighborhoods. Now, whether you're drawn to the religious iconography, the Latino culture, or the layered stories of LA itself, this collection invites you to see the city anew through the lens of its most beloved saint. Now, tonight, our speaker is going to take us on a journey as he shares some of the 30 years of photographs of murals of the Virgin of Guadalupe seen on the walls here in Los Angeles. If you have questions for our speaker, please hold them to the end. I think we're going to do a little Q&A at the end, and we'll definitely have time for that. I'll come back up here to help facilitate that. We also, I see some of you have already acquired a copy of the book and are leafing through it. We do have copies of the book here for sale with our incredible partner, Angel City Press, in the back. And our speaker and author will sign copies of the book if you're interested in getting one. And I also want to just note that there are some prints up here of some of the work that appears in the book. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, please come look at that. Those are also, I believe, available for sale if you're interested. And now, enough of me and this very long introduction. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Sam Quinones.
I don't think that's going to go there. Here we go. How you guys doing? Hey. Everybody good? Yeah. So hot out there. Nice to be in a kind of a darkened room, I guess. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks so much, Kevin. I've lived in Pasadena in Southern California for years. I have never seen this place. First time. I'd like to say thanks also to Elliot and Angel City Press for publishing what is my first book of photojournalism. I'm really a writer. A little bit about my career, as Kevin said, I lived in Mexico for 10 years and wrote these bottom two books about nonfiction stories from Mexico and then nonfiction stories about immigration. I returned to LA, where I'm from. Actually, I grew up in Claremont. My father was a literature professor out at Claremont McKenna University College. And I worked for the LA Times for 10 years, and I wrote the top book, Dreamland and the Least of Us, about all the problems associated with addiction to opioids in America, and now fentanyl and methamphetamine, which you can see the results of on various street corners and tent encampments if you pass by them. And because I wanted to break away from that, I wrote my fifth book, which was about tuba players and band directors, and I wanted to write about people who were looking to create something for themselves from within instead of buy happiness from some product they can purchase. It's true stories of tuba players, band directors. To me, felt like I was writing about the opposite of addiction, the answers. As one band director said, you know, the answers to all these other things you've been writing about drugs and everything, it's right here in people who work hard without any expectation of wealth or fame, just simply because they love it. And so I wrote a book about tuba players and band directors, which is very strange because I do not play the tuba and I was never in marching band. But the point of journalism is not that you're going to write about what you know. You're going to write about what you don't know, and you're going to find out all about it, all right? Which brings me to this, through the book at hand. I am not Christian and I'm not Catholic, but I wrote this, with Angel City Press, published this book of photos of the Virgin of Guadalupe on the walls of Los Angeles. Living in Mexico for 10 years, it's important to understand, I came to understand the history of the Virgin of Guadalupe. The Virgin of Guadalupe was an apparition, a spirit that appeared to an Aztec man shortly after the Spanish conquest. And this spirit, long story, but basically became the patron saint of Mexico. And largely did that because she became kind of like the mother of Mexico. She especially became mother to unprotected, poor people, working people, people looking for warmth from a hard world, protection, tenderness. She became a protector for all kinds of people, criminals too, gang members as well. And she became even more potent a symbol than the church itself in Mexico, in my view. There's lots of people there's people who say they're Catholic, but there's many more who are fervent believers in the Virgin. And in every working class neighborhood, you will usually find an altar to her. And December 12th is her night, and they adorn the altars beautifully. And here in Los Angeles, if you go down to the cathedral downtown, you'll see a similar outpouring. Huge numbers of people will come out on that night. I grew to have a soft spot in my heart for her, even though I'm not Catholic, simply because of that role that she played as kind of like a protector, a motherly tenderness and warmth and patience towards people who were having a very, very difficult time in their lives. I then returned to the United States, to LA, and one of the things I began to see was in Los Angeles, dozens and dozens and dozens of murals of the Virgin of Guadalupe, far more than you would ever see in Mexico City. Way more than in Mexico City. Way more really than in San Antonio. I've been in San Antonio, El Paso, Tucson, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, San Diego. Los Angeles has many times more Virgin murals on the walls of Los Angeles than you would see in all those cities really combined. It's a remarkable thing, and I began to try to understand why this would be. At first, what I began to do was just take pictures. At first, I'm not really by training a photographer. But I began to think, you know what? I'm just going to shoot whatever I can get from my car real quick. And for the first few years, this began in about 2011, I just roll by one, bam, on my way. It really would be like 10 seconds maybe that I would spend with the mural. And for a long time, this lasted several years, and finally I left the Times, 2014. By then, though, I had figured out that maybe it was better to stop, get out of the car, and in fact wait until the right time of day, like about this time of day, frankly, a little bit earlier too. And the place where I first saw that was this mural right here. Nino's Meat Market is at 52nd and Avalon, South Central. It was a cold January day, and I was struck by how the sun was hitting this yellow wall, and I thought to myself, gee, man, maybe I should just stop. I got out of my car, stood there, not sure what to do. I took a couple pictures of just the wall itself, and then this man came out of the store and walked past, and I thought, wow, it's a very stark image. He looks very dark, the shadow, of course, and he's got a little bag of groceries in his hand. And I took that photograph, and that photograph sent the project on a different path. A path of saying, okay, instead of just taking as many as I can find, yeah, everyone I would find I would take a picture of, but some of them I would wait and see what happened and see who passed by. Not that people passed by to pray to her. I never saw anybody pray, crossing themselves, but not praying to the Virgin. Rather, it was like she was watching over them as they went through their daily lives. And the Virgin is always painted in the same way, and you can see it here. Looking down to the right, right? And so she's looking down at people as they go by their daily life. Now, over the next several years, I would go by this market every year or so, maybe. And every time I did, I think literally every time I did, there was a new business in the market. So at first it was, Feliz Market y Carniceria, and then it was Chivista, and Chivista means a fan of Chivas, which is a Guadalajara soccer team, and that's what this uniform that man has on. He was the owner. As I was there that day, this woman with her little baby began pushing the stroller in front of it. I took the photos there. I began to understand why there were so many Virgins of Guadalupe and what she meant. The Virgin of Guadalupe is really the arbiter of two major forces that were unleashed to California in the 1980s. One is very negative and destructive. The other is very positive and constructive. On one hand, it is the power of street gangs in the neighborhoods. Their ability to just kind of dominate with their graffiti, and then of course once the graffiti starts up, rivals come shoot them, they shoot the rivals, etc. All kinds of problems ensue. The other is the enormous force unleashed by arriving in California, and Los Angeles in particular, of desire on the part of immigrants to start their own businesses. And this was especially true. This is why Los Angeles has so many of these murals, because these immigrants, when they came, saw that there was all this opportunity to do what they could never do, at least successfully, back in Mexico or Central America, and that was start their own business and have it actually function as almost something that could actually support a family. They were skin of the teeth kind of operations. They did not make a lot of money, and they did not have enough money to constantly be painting over gang graffiti. And many of these are in very heavy gang neighborhoods, or were. And so they came to understand that the Virgin could be their protector in that, because the street gangs, Latino street gangs, revere the Virgin of Guadalupe as their own protector. Many street gangs you could see have the Virgin tattooed on their, gang members have the Virgin tattooed on their backs. And so putting a Virgin up on the wall means that no self-respecting gang member would deface a wall with the Virgin of Guadalupe. At the same time, these families they really had no money for publicity. And so she became what little publicity they could afford. By simply painting a Virgin on the walls, you were saying, I'm with you. She's blessing our store. Maybe she will bless people who shop in it. And so what began to develop was this real, huge wave, although it was very unnoticed because it was such a small thing. So the businesses were all small. And at this point in Los Angeles, we were creating, very important in this story, huge numbers of small commercial spaces that were very cheap. The first places were in swap meets. Now, when I was growing up in Los Angeles, swap meets were for selling old tools and old bikes. Immigrants transformed that. They began to sell new stuff, kitchen stuff, clothes, that kind of stuff, some jewelry. And then in 1983, they invented the indoor swap meet, which was transforming like those old stores, Montgomery Ward's, old Ralph's, old Sears, old Safeways, into large swap meets, basically, except for they're indoor, and they subdivided them into very small stalls, and the merchants would come and pay and set up their stalls, and they were more permanent than the outdoor swap meets. And so what you had was, along with that, strip malls began to be developed. And so all through the 80s and into the 90s, it became very, very possible for immigrants to realize this dream that they had come with. So many people had worked for other people in Mexico. To go through all this trouble, coming here illegally and all that. Settling down in a place where you were supposed to get rich, the idea of working for other people was like uninspiring. Right? And so you began to see huge numbers of people taking advantage of this cheap commercial real estate, trying to transform their businesses into like this mini market. And the problem is, of course, like most small businesses, many of them fail. So this one had in a period of like 6 years, I think, had 4 different markets. And it's another one even today. It's Avalon Meat Market number 2 is the 4th permutation. As I began to spend time with the Virgin murals, I began to capture people kind of in these, I guess you could call them public intimate settings, I guess. This woman here pushing her laundry, past the Virgin, looking up at the Virgin, near sunset. It came to me that these were like tender moments, that these were These are moments when people, we're trying to, we're feeling a kind of a connection. And then at the bottom, young boys. These boys, I was standing out in front of this mural one day. This is over Lincoln Heights. And just thinking, okay, let's see. And these little boys just walk by and they see me with my camera and they start doing like Elvis Presley dances, right? And I begin to take their photograph. And as I began to do this, and the light was so nice and everything, I began to see that these were probably better photographs than I'd ever taken before. I was not a talented photographer. I worked for the LA Times, where there are some spectacular photographers. I did learn a fair amount from some of them, so I put that to use. I began to wait for the light to be just right, as I said, and also these tender. I began to see these tender moments like this. That she's looking down at this boy young man who is kind of hidden in the shadows, and I had seen him before, kind of looking kind of like facing off with somebody else. This had been several minutes before, and that was not what was going on, but she was kind of looking down at him, protecting him in a way that it was my interpretation of what was going on, but I grew to love these scenes of people kind of just going through daily life and went under the gaze of the Virgin. It was very special moments, it felt to me, and I did not expect them. When I started this project, that was not what I was looking for. I was looking more to just document these things, and then all of a sudden it became something deeper than that. It became, this kid was riding his skateboard for about a block before he came by here. And like any LA Times photographer will tell you, you just got to wait for the photograph to happen. So I sat there and I go, okay, he's going to come right by here. And I love that she is just looking right down at him as he skates on by. And again, this is Carniceria El Paisa. Paisa means kind of the guy who's from my country, Mexico. Carne de primera, first high quality meats and all that. It just, as I got into this project, it became a project about working class LA too, and it was all of this because I got out of my car one day, One of the things that also became very clear very early on was that if you wanted a career as a painter, a business sign painter, and this is extraordinarily important to these businesses, nobody has money for a neon sign. Okay, there are no neon signs in these businesses, or very few, open, or maybe a Budweiser beer sign, but nothing elaborate, no big 7-Eleven or anything like that, And so how do you, and you don't have any money for promotion, and you also have a market that really is limited by about 5 to 10 block radius around your business. No one's going to go walk many blocks more to your place. So you got to capture the people as they're there. But one of the things that became clear was that you needed to know how to paint cartons of eggs too. And Mazola oil and bottles of milk and popsicles and paper towels and all this over and over and over. This was part of the thing. It was rare to see the Virgin of Guadalupe on a store without also promotion of what the store sold. We got the Virgin, and by the way, we got Mazola oil at a 2-for-1 or whatever, Just beautiful. As this project went on, it kept on going on and on. I mean, I spent numerous years doing this, although not full time, obviously. I do many things, and then I do all my interviews about drug addiction and so on, come back to LA, and as a way of kind of like a lethargic way of just kind of like purging, I would just go look for the Virgin murals. And I had a way of doing it. I would drive down these streets, mostly the business corridors, slowly making sure no one's behind me, and every corner I'd come to, I'd do this, like this. because most of the time she was painted, she could have been painted on the front, but frequently it was on the side. So I got used to this. I got used to two changes in the way these murals look. This was what the mural looked when I first came. This was over in Lincoln Heights on Mozart. And up here it says, you can't really see it, the freshest beer in town, coldest beer in town, we take EBT and all that kind of stuff. And then I took a bunch of photographs. Again, I thought the sunlight was so beautiful, the way the guy's shadow in the stop sign and all, they just like found it so cool. I came by there, I say 2 years later maybe, and I found that the mural had been totally redone, much livelier colors, and still the coldest beer in town, by the way, at ABC Market, so you want to head over there if you want really cold beer. But I walked in there to the store, and I said, wow, you painted over it. And it turned out I realized that the owner was not Mexican. And I said, where are you from? He goes, Pakistan. I go, oh, well, I'm guessing you're not Catholic then. Yeah, no, I'm not. But I wanted to paint this, repaint this, because I wanted people in the neighborhood to know that I was with them, that I was Pakistani, but it didn't matter, that I was really more interested in serving customers and in my area, and all my customers are Latino and Muslim Mexican, you know. So we had a long talk about the importance of connecting with your clientele and all this, very, very interesting. But again, he was one of these merchants who had come like an immigrant. And what does LA mean? It means small business. It means this is your chance. You know, working for someone else, man, that's just not good. And so he bought this market, he said. The other guy retired, I guess, is what he said. It was getting old or whatever. And he bought it, and one of the first things he did was repaint the whole market mural, you know. In time, too, I began to see that there were similarities to, you know, some of the Renaissance art that you see in like Italian churches and museums and whatnot, because the version was painted on the materials that were cheapest and most easily used to create quick commercial sites, and that is stucco. As I get, and concrete. And as I got into it, I began to realize I could easily just call, you know, this book The Virgin of Stucco or something, because so often you would see her painting and it would look, you know, the face would look strange because of the cracks in the stucco or simply just really, really rough. But I grew to love that too. I thought that one over here with the concrete cinder block and then the concrete swabs, like that kind of thing. I just love getting really close. I began to take lots of photographs really up close of the Virgin. So it wasn't just the mural itself, it was like the very small detail. And you can see how different she is painted. Now she's known as the Dark Virgin, La Virgen Morena in Mexico. But you could see the different ways she is painted, and in that sense, there's only a few things you have to do to really paint a virgin. One is have her looking down to the right, have the green cloak, have the stars, and there's a few other things that she has. But that's also the appeal, the Virgin of Guadalupe. It's kind of like it's almost like a Protestant image, in that everybody can have their own relationship with the Virgin of Guadalupe and paint her the way they would like and see her the way far too often, I have to say, she looks, not in these pictures, but in others, she looks downright disappointed, like irritated, like, come on, you know, kind of thing. And frequently she's very, very white, like in the top left, you know. Frequently, as I said earlier, the appeal of one appeal of the Virgin of Guadalupe to business owners was that it kept gangs from defacing their properties, right? But it's also the case that frequently, or with some regularity, you began to see her with gang members who had been murdered. These fellas, I don't know the story. One of the things that I vowed to do was like look into who the Hernandez boys were and why do they have two murals. You can't read this too easily, but rest in peace, Hernandez brothers. I'm assuming it's the same brothers that both murals are referring to. But the top one, I spent like an hour just looking at it. It's huge. It's very big. It's 7-8 feet tall and probably 15 feet, 20 feet long, I suppose, something like that. And I just stood there, half hoping actually that someone would ask me why I was looking at the Hernandez boys mural, and maybe they'd be able to tell me who the Hernandez boys were. Again, the Virgin there looks kind of like mad or bummed or something. I'm not quite sure. What really struck me were the faces of the guys. You know, very powerful, and they just take up. You just drive by. I just almost crashed my car when I drove by there because I had to just stop. It was a remarkable thing. At first, I didn't even realize there was a Virgin involved, and then I stopped and I looked, and oh, in the middle, there she is. Okay, then I got out of my car and did it. As time went on, too, I began to see that if I played the shadows right, I could come up with. I don't think this was invention. I actually think that there was something to this, but that I could come up with scenes of the Virgin and people kind of asking her. I never saw anybody do this. I never saw anybody come and beg, pray, and all that kind of stuff. Never happened. But there were times when, this man over here kind of has a hat in his hand on the top. And this is the shadow of a couple with a young baby next to the Virgin. It seemed to me that this was a really good way of illustrating her importance, I guess, to the folks on the street and what she meant to people, even though they passed by her and may not really notice her the way I was noticing her. The other thing that really became clear was that she had connections to some of the more the liberal political icons. Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King. I'm not sure if that's John or Robert Kennedy, but Kennedy for sure. This was particularly true of the murals that have been up for a long time and maybe have been painted in the late 70s or the early 80s, when the political aspect of the Virgin of Guadalupe was kind of connected to the farm workers' union strikes and this kind of thing, and also, Robert Kennedy, who was really very connected to those, to that union movement. That's how my parents know of him. We didn't eat grapes in our house for like 2 years or something like that when I was a kid. And then you have the Virgin of Obama, which is down on 42nd Place, and the side street is Vermont, south of the 110. The guy, this is at a place called Luis Market, and it's been up for, I think this was early in the Obama administration. It must have been painted like around the early part of his second term. And it's just part of how the Virgin kind of melts into daily life with concerns and cares that go beyond simple spirituality, seems to me. This is in Boyle Heights, First Street, Mariachi Plaza. This is a famous mural, and when I put the book out, this one woman told me that I had known her for a long time. I did not know. She said, my job is, I can't remember the name of it. It was basically, she was the caretaker of that mural. That mural was painted by a famous painter whose name, frankly, I forget right now. She told me all about this. I didn't know much about it. I just knew that this was a famous mural, and all the mariachis, venerate her, ask her for help in finding gigs and paying parties and stuff that they can play. And this mariachi's holding a can of Coca-Cola as he walked by. I thought that was great. I wanted people in the active daily life as part of my project. Some of these murals are very old and very well known in their neighborhoods. The one at the top left is Ramona Gardens Housing Project, East LA. This is, if you get a close look at this one, she looks very upset. She looks actually angry, you know. And the one below is a bakery on Florence, and I can't remember the cross street, but Florence Avenue, where the owner, the man who started the bakery, this bakery was a mecca for the Mexican community as they began to move into what had been a black community. And they did not have stores that sold any Mexican products. This was it. And at a certain point, he realized that there was this Cholo Latino gang problem developing, and he could be better off getting on its right side than on its bad side. And he hired a couple of the gang members to paint this mural here. His name was Pancho. This is Pancho's Bakery. And the woman on the right, sitting on the right, is his daughter. The woman on the left is a very long time employee. And it's the cursive writing on the wall is in memory, loving memory of Pancho. This mural has been there since the 80s, I believe, and it's been retouched a couple of times, largely because it's there because I think Pancho understood that he needed, there was very serious gang problems in that neighborhood, and he needed to get on the right side of these guys. And so he painted that, and it became even more of a mecca. For a time, they had 2 cashiers going full all day long. They had a huge offering of baked goods, Mexican baked goods, which is why people mainly came in. Also tortillas and a variety of other things. Now, Pancho's Bakery is a sign of how things have changed. There's lots of other stores that are offering Mexican goods. There's big supermarkets that offer them. There's small mom and pops, etc. And so this place is really kind of on its last legs, it seemed to me. I'm not sure that the children run it with the same care that Pancho once did, but the main thing is that there's so much competition for what they once had a monopoly on. I want to kind of end with, and then I'm happy to any questions you all may have, with a strange thing that happened to me about a month ago. I was driving down Compton Avenue in South Central, and I looked to my right as I passed this alley, and it looked to me like the alley was painted with many different strange things, and I just went on by and I said, and then I got about 3 blocks, then I flipped to you, and I came back, and I said, my job as a journalist is to obey those questions that kind of pop up, like, what the hell was that? But stop, boom, back up. And when I did, I stopped near this alley and I walked down it. At the very end was an enormous homeless encampment. But it was 50 yards pretty much of just unimpeded walk. And all the way along the way, I realized that someone has turned this entire alley into an entire museum of strange, very strange folk art. So all these paintings of the cosmos and young women out in the cosmos for some reason, and planets, you know. And then there's more planets, and there's a whole wall of names which I'm not sure I fully understood. At the entrance to the alley is the Virgin of Guadalupe. There's a photo I had taken many times actually. Passed it by very quickly. I had not seen that the alley had all these paintings when I was doing that. But as I walked down, it was like this museum of some strange folk artist painting on both sides until I got to the very back of the alley. And there I found the strangest of all, which is the Virgin of Guadalupe, together with a longitude and latitude for Lake Tahoe, a painting of Warren G. Harding, and another painting of Henry Harrison, who was our shortest lived. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I began to realize that this had to be all the painting of one man. It had the same sense, all the paintings. And finally, I got to know him. Javier Oseguera painted all this over a 2-year period, and some of it he paints over again. I had a long talk with Mr. Oseguera, but it was impeded by the fact that his homeless encampment, which is this is at the entrance, and his thing is all the way at the back, and there's several people who live there. He's one. But right next to them is a house and a yard with 3 roosters that are refugees from the fighting rooster days. And I lived in Mexico for a long time, as I said, and I know that what happens to roosters who survive years of fighting is that they go crazy. By the end of that, they're alive, but they are crowing all day long. There's no stop. There's no, at 1 in the morning, 3 in the, I lived next to one, and I was wakened 2, 3, 4 times a night by this manic rooster who had survived cockfight. And that's what they told me. Yeah, all these roosters, they kind of retired them from fighting and stuff like that. Anyway, I got to know Javier Oseguera, and then the problem was, I talked to him, I had my tape recorder on, but I really don't know what he told me, because these roosters were it's like having an electric guitar playing right next to you. I could not understand when Mr. Oseguera was telling me about the history of all this. So I've got to go back and talk to him again. But one reason I want to is because as I rode away, I began to realize that I saw his style of Virgin paintings all over. And I think I stumbled on the guy who has painted probably more Virgin murals than anybody, any single guy, anyway. Except for that I don't know it because the entire interview was marred by the fact that it was these manic roosters crowing away, and all the time, And so my next job is to go down there and see him when there aren't the roosters around, or take him to another place and talk to him and ask him about how many of these murals on the walls of Los Angeles he has actually painted. I'm expecting it's a lot, but I don't know. Anyway, finally, I want to show you one other thing, and I give you, if you want to take a moment and take a picture of this with your phones, of this QR code, feel free, and you will come to my beloved map of the Virgin of Guadalupe murals in Los Angeles. I don't know if you see those. I'll show them to you in a second. Hold on 1 second. How do I, you told me how to, here we go, okay. 218 Virgin murals, and you can see how they are clustered. Now, it's true that I have not been out to Thousand Oaks, but I'm probably sure that there's not many Virgin murals in Thousand Oaks. Nevertheless, I do believe, right around here, I need to go there some more, because I'm probably gonna find more. Maybe in Inglewood, maybe out here, Santana right there. There's one. I'm sure there's more down there. I just haven't had time to get down there. But it's a remarkable thing. I just love this map because you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Do you see how these murals seem to be lined up? Like this is San Pedro right here. This is Broadway. I think this is Main Street or Central or one. Anyway, you see these lines. These are all just commercial corridors. And it shows you the power of the Virgin to protect what people need protection for most, and that is their precious investment in the American dream. And it's, to me, this is kind of why it seemed to me that I did this in the end. It was this project that made me understand the appeal of Los Angeles. We have a lot of problems in this town right now. Many problems. A lot of them are of our own creation. But I also think that there is an enormous appeal for what this place has to offer. And I think you can see it in the map and the numbers of murals of the Virgin of Guadalupe on these commercial corridors in South and East LA. Anyway, thank you all very, very much. If you have questions, comments, anything at all, feel free to yell out or throw them out.
Yeah, just raise your hand and we'll call you Elizabeth.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, first a short question and a real question. Where did you live in Mexico?
I lived in Mexico City, but I was a freelance writer, so I had to find stories. I couldn't compete with all the big dogs from the United States down there, and so I traveled many. I know most of the country, you know. So.
Okay, so then my main question is: did you also visit the churches dedicated to the Virgin of Guadalupe?
No.
And I wonder if they also have.
Yes. The reason I didn't is I think
It's a separate.
it never occurred to me to visit the churches, because this is by definition almost a secular. It's not secular. It's spiritual. It is economic. It is so many things. But and there are many churches dedicated to her. But first of all, I wanted murals that were public, not inside. I didn't want murals that were inside. And they had to be places where people would interact daily with her. But also, I had come to feel, by the time I left Mexico, that she meant something to ordinary Mexicans that they did not find in church, honestly. And that's why she is probably more powerful a symbol and powerful an idea than the church itself, even though you start talking that way and some people get very mad. But my feeling was, I found people, the first time I ever saw gang members interact with her, I did a story about a gang in the town of Zamora in Michoacan, and I put it in my first book. And on December 12th, I was there, and we walked from this little slum neighborhood where they lived down to the cathedral downtown, Zamora, and the last 100 yards, these guys walked on their knees. You know, it was a big deal. Or at least they wanted everyone to see that it was a big deal for them. You know, a couple of these guys, I'm pretty sure, got into the cartel world, and I'm not sure what's become of many of them at this point. But to me, it felt like there was a power that you could see that she exerted and commanded among the gang world, which was exactly why we have so many. We had such a huge gang problem, and so many of the gangs were Latino, and so many of the neighborhoods were Mexican, that she kind of put herself. She was in the middle of this collision of gangs and the deep desire to start your own business.
Sam,
You know?
let's get you back on camera. You're out of frame.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry.
You can lean on this chair.
My bad.
That's a
I
good
didn't
chair.
realize.
That's
I
okay.
needed to. Sorry about that.
Now you're back on camera.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a sound engineer, but I think you can solve your rooster problem if you can find a sound engineer and they can remove the rooster sound.
Maybe,
Because it's on a
yeah,
track or something.
I listened to the tape,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, I asked him a question, and he goes, I think the reason was, and as I said, I had lived near one of these manic roosters in a boarding house when I first moved to Mexico. I had no money at all, and every morning this damn rooster woke me up 3 or 4 times a night. I wanted to kill it. I was not rational when it came to this rooster. I really, and the best day of my life was when I moved out of that boarding house and into a real apartment, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
But that way, if you don't get a chance to get back and interview Angel rooster.
Oh, I wanted to throw a cherry bomb in that yard. It was like, boom, boom. But
I agree.
manic, it was not proper rooster crowing. It was, but loud as hell. It was like a Fender guitar through an amp or something, you know.
He had lost his mind.
Yes, no, and that was the sense that I got from, there were 3 of them behind this wall, right next to his house. And I said, how do you sleep with this, man? Oh, yeah, no, I'm used to it, that kind of thing. He grew up in a little village with
And my
this.
second question is about the tuba book. Did they do a documentary or something on that?
Yeah, based on the
I saw
story
that.
so I wrote this story for the LA Times
Yes.
about the importance of the tuba in Mexican LA,
Yeah.
which is, you know, I grew up in the 70s, guitar was a thing. But in Mexican LA, immigrant LA, it's the tuba. And there's a lot of reasons, and you can read the book and it'll explain.
I think I saw it, that's why I went.
Yeah, but then what happened was I wrote that story, front page of the LA Times. I get a call from a band director who says, that's a wonderful story, predominantly Mexican high school. You know, that's a wonderful story, that's absolutely true. And the proof of that is that we are getting all our tubas stolen. And so there was a big rash of stolen tubas. And these are a bad tuba costs $2,000, you know. And so I wrote that story too. And from that, I then began to interview tuba players of all kinds, because I have this thing in me that if you find people who are doing something for the pure love of it and not to get wealthy and famous, because can you name a tuba player? No. Or a band director, you know? So the idea is, if you stick with people like that, you will find unbelievable stories. And so as I was writing the 2 books about drug addiction, I would occasionally do interviews with tuba players, not really understanding where I would ever go with it. I just wanted to make sure that I stuck with the tuba idea for a while. And then after the last book, which was a particularly rough one about fentanyl and methamphetamine and mental illness and homelessness, although it's about many, many things, and many parts of the book are very beautiful and glorious, I think. There is this really ominous part to it. My agent said, maybe you should see, I told her, I'm kind of done writing about the drug thing, you know, this is rough. And she said, why don't you see what kind of book you could write about your tuba project? And so sure enough, I did, and it was the most beautiful, wondrous experience of my journalistic life, because I was finding out about people who were building something from within, not looking for happiness from something they buy, right? And through hard work. That's why the subtitle of the book is Forging Fulfillment from the Bass-Worn Band and Hard Work. I wanted to stand up for hard work. That's how the tuba players and band directors, through their life stories, kind of embody values that lead to productive lives. That's why you find so many people, so few band kids ever get involved in gangs or drugs, that kind of, they all have good GPAs and they're leading very productive lives 20 years later. That's why one band director said, they asked him how'd the band do this year? He goes, it's too soon to tell. Ask me in 10 years. Then we'll know, you know. So I loved doing that. Also because it was easy, because I would call up a tuba player and I'd say I'm a reporter, but after he got over his amazement, I said, so I was wondering if I could drop by and interview you. Hell yes! You know, nobody really interviews tuba players, right? So I was like, I'll definitely do that, you know, and so it was not hard to get interviews, you know what I mean? But more than that, the beauty of the story was the remarkable tales that these people's lives, all revolving around this thing that showed them when they were in 7th grade or 9th grade or whatever, what they could be in life. And when you have a kid who has, through hard work, shown himself what he can do, something he never thought possible, nobody else thought possible, that is an enormous bulwark. It's almost a narcotic in itself. And it is protection against drugs and all that. The best protection you can find is a kid who believes, has shown himself that he can do this. Right?
So we want to make sure there's time for you to sign some books. So
Oh, sure.
we'll do maybe two more questions.
Yes,
You've
right
got
there,
one.
sir. Yeah.
Worship, the attraction to the Virgin of Guadalupe, Is it pretty much all the way from Tijuana to Yucatan, or is there some regionalization to it?
I'm sorry, I missed what you,
Is it pretty much across the board from Tijuana to the Yucatan that everybody is interested in the Virgin, or is there some regionalization?
well, let me stand here maybe. Okay.
Good.
Sorry, Jim. I would say that the Virgin of Guadalupe is nationwide. She's beatified by the Catholic Church, and everywhere you go in Mexico, you find the Virgin of Guadalupe. However, Mexico is also converting to Protestant Christianity very quickly. When I was there, and I left there in 2004, the conversion rate was quite sizable, and Protestant Christians are not down with this. Okay, the one place, the times when you will find virgins painted over, murals painted over, is when a new vendor or a new business owner moves in and he's Latino but evangelical Christian. And so across the country, you will see the influence of a variety of Protestant denominations, Pentecostal, Baptist, Jehovah's Witness. It's usually the more effusive kind of Christianity. It's not so many Presbyterian and Methodist Church of Lutheran churches. And then a lot of the non-denominational kind of churches. But that's where you will not find. And I have a big kind of painted screen in my house that I bought in Mexico, and it's got the pictures of the Virgin and all of them. And this one woman came over one time who was I knew her, she's Guatemalan, but I knew her to be, very devoutly evangelical, and she was kind of freaked out by it. Like, well, first of all, why do you have this here, and why do you understand what that means? And I'm like, I don't want to get into it with her, but that is where you find people not going along with and I don't know what the numbers are now, but it was a significant amount of the country had converted, particularly in like the Indian regions like Oaxaca, Chiapas, and there's a lot of reasons why people convert to evangelical Christianity. Basically, it's to get away from poverty, because the Catholic Church in those areas is really connected to, it's a long story, but basically the Catholic Church and traditional Catholicism in those areas is connected to the practice of having annual fiestas that impoverish numerous people in fact, most people have to go to the United States to work to pay for their part of the fiesta. Yeah, it happens a lot. I wrote about it in the first book too. And so a lot of those people, when they come north, one of the first things they do is convert to Protestant Christianity. You want proof of this, go up and down Pico, go up and down Vermont, Normandy, Adams, and you will see one, and frequently it's like Oaxacan or Chapaneco or one of those kinds, or maybe it's Guatemalan too, of Protestant churches. And they look very much like, I lived in Chicago, where there's a ton of black storefront churches. They look just like those, except it's in Spanish. And if you stop in, usually if you stop in on a Wednesday night, like at like 7, 8 o'clock, you will see very like raucous kind of, effusive kind of Protestant Christianity, but what you will not find is the Virgin of Guadalupe, ever.
We have one more question.
One more question, yeah.
To follow up on this,
I'm going to have to get closer because I'm hard of hearing due to my exposure to lots of punk rock when I was a kid.
to follow up on this, earlier you said that LA probably has more of these virgin murals than any other city in the US that has large Latino population.
Yes.
How about in Mexico, where you spend so much time? Are there even more?
No.
No?
No. In Mexico, the murals, they don't have the same, I think they don't have the same need. There was not the same need for her, It's kind of weird. There was not the same need for the Virgin of Guadalupe down there, in part because probably gangs are not the main reason why businesses fail. corruption and lack of market and all that is part of it, but not so much the gangs. And there is a kind of a mural tradition among high artists, Diego Rivera and some others, but it doesn't translate down to the working classes so much. It was really here in Los Angeles where that collision, where she was required, and required in a very public way. That's why I didn't want to go to places where she was indoors, because her need was in public. And so she was needed publicly, and to promote the stores and to protect the stores against the gangs and all that kind of thing. And so that is why I have 218 murals on that map, but I guarantee you there's a bunch that I don't have GPS coordinates for, and there's probably many more that I haven't found. So I'm thinking probably well over 300. Although the other thing is that they come and they go, right? Sometimes paint over it, sometimes paint a new one. Some guy is evangelical, comes in, paints it over, you never see it again. Sometimes, like one beautiful mural that I thought was very nice, and they put Christmas lights at night, it's very beautiful. Woman puts a nail salon in, she paints over all that. You know, but that's what the beauty of it, it's constantly, like neighborhoods and like people's lives, it's constantly in flux and moving. And so there's never an end to it, I suppose, or there won't be an end to it soon. And I just am in a kind of an idea like, okay, I'm just going to document this as best I can at the moment I'm there, you know.
Well, there has to be an end to this.
So I'm sorry, thank you all so much. For sale, these pictures are for sale, $20 a piece. Thank you all very much for coming out.
So I'll repeat that. So the prints up here are $20 a piece if you'd like to look at those. The books are in the back, and Sam will sign them for you if you would like a book. They're beautiful. There is an index in the back of all the locations for the photos if you don't want to go do that QR code map. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Sam, for your presentation. Join me in thanking our speaker. We hope to see you again. We don't have a program here in September because we have a late August program, but we'll be back in October. Check the calendars on your table. That's the newest calendar of book club events, online, in person, in San Francisco and Pasadena. Feel free to take a copy of the quarterly newsletter, which I also put on your tables. Thanks everyone for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great night.